Hello there. Hopefully you can all hear me. Um, Please let me know if you've joined me in the chat so that I can, if you're watching live, that you can get a point on Show My Homework. And let me know who you are, because there's a couple of you who don't have your names attached to your Google account. So please let me know who you are, then I can see then I make sure I've got your name correctly and all of that sort of thing. So we're continuing today with our lists lesson. Last lesson we looked at some of the ideas behind lists, and this lesson I just want to start off with a little recap to see how much you can remember. So what I'd like you to do is look at this piece of code and predict for me what you think it will output. Maybe just write it on a piece of paper or something like that. Don't have to post it in the chat because we're going to go through it, but I do want you to have a little bit of a go, see how much of that you can work out yourself, how much of it you can remember. So hopefully you'll be able to remember how this works. So I'll give you a couple of minutes on that. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at that. We're going to go through it bit by bit, and actually I'm going to run this in Thonny so that you can see bit by bit how it works. So let me just save this. What do I want to call it? So let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so our to-do list says it's a list of items. Now you can see we've got these commas between them. We could have this on one long line, but just having those gaps in between, it doesn't really matter whether they're there or not. They're actually the same as having one long line. It's the exact same thing. So I can leave it like that, or I can have it that way either. So both of those work. Then when I run this, so if I debug it instead of running it properly, you'll see, in fact, we want to look at the variables going on here as well. So I'm going to just move these over here. The to-do list gets saved, doesn't it? So that is being saved as the to-do list, right? It's now saying to-do 4 becomes to-do 1. Now, what's to-do 1? Let's have a look. So to-do 1, remember, the first item in the list is does not have index of 1. It has an index of 0. So to-do 1 is not CS revision. It should be sleep. So to-do 4 would be to-do 1, which would be sleep, as it says here. So which one is to-do 4? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So instead of check Insta, we're going to change it to sleep. So if you look back over here, it now says CS revision, sleep, Netflix binge, shower, and then sleep instead of check Insta. You can see it's changed. Then to do 1 changes to have dinner. Which one's to do 1? Well, remember, the first item in the list is not the at index 1, it's at index 0. So 0, 1. So sleep now becomes have dinner. So CS revision, have dinner, Netflix binge, shower, sleep. And let's pull that along a little bit so you can see it. Then to do 2 becomes to do 0. Which one's to do 0? CS revision, because it's the 0th item, or aka the first item in the list. So to do 0, it goes, which one's the 0th item in this list? It's CS revision. Which one's to do 2? So 0, 1, and then 2. Netflix binge. So Netflix binge, well, on this list now, it's Netflix binge. To do 2 becomes CS revision. So now it's printing, it's going out, and it's going 4x in range 5. So it goes from 0 to 5. It's currently 0. It's going to print out to do 0. X is 0. So to do 0 is CS revision. It keeps going round until it prints out all the items in the list. So it prints out. And obviously, that is clearly what you do when you get home from school. Usually you do your CS revision, you have your dinner, then you do more CS revision, then you shower, then you sleep. Clearly that's obviously your to-do list when you get home, right? Right? No? Oh, okay. Well, there you go. There's our to-do list that has been changed. Rather than Netflix binging and checking Instagram, you are now doing more CS revision, because obviously that's really important. All right. Okay. Let's move on. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about is that we talked about lists, and we talked about this word called arrays. Now, Python doesn't have an array. It doesn't have the idea of array. It has lists. In theory, these two things are not the same. You need to be aware of this for your exams, okay? So, and I'm just kind of going through some ideas for you so that you understand the difference between arrays and lists, okay? An array is a collection of data which has the same data type. Now, if you remember back to, let me go back to that. Data type, if you remember back to our first lessons in programming, a data type is things like integer, Boolean, string, float. Remember those four main data types? That's what we're talking about. Everything in an array needs to have the same data type. So you can't have the word hello and then also in the same array have a number in there. You have to have everything being the same data type. Now, generally, we've been using our lists in that way so far because all of our items in this to-do list are all strings. And before, we've used lists that have numbers in them instead. You can see that all of these items are strings. You could change it all to be numbers. You could decide that we're going to have, because this is a list, and I'll get into that in a moment, you could decide to have a string and a number and a float and a Boolean in there. It doesn't have to all be the same as part of a list, but if you were using an array, which we would use in other programming languages, not Python, then you have to make sure that they are all the same data type. Now, an array uses a static area of memory. When I say a static area of memory, I mean when it comes to in the RAM, you remember back when we were talking about things being saved in random access memory. When everything is saved, it goes when you declare your array, that's basically saying this is my array over here, to do equals, and then creating your array. You are reserving a section of memory. So you're basically saying this part of the RAM is going to store this array. Because of this, we need to say how big our array needs to be straight away and what type of data it will hold. Because our data will always have a certain length. It will only be able to store a certain amount at once. So a Boolean value will always hold either a 1 or a 0. That's really easy to store in RAM. Whereas a string, it could hold lots of letters, lots of characters in it. So that's why in arrays in other programming languages other than Python, say for example Java, okay, the array needs to be declared and you need to tell it what type of data it will hold before you add data to it. So it can't grow over time. You can't add data to it, okay? You can't add data to your array, okay? On the other hand, a list contains data which doesn't have to be of the same data type, a bit like we mentioned earlier, where we have data which is, we could have a list that is full of, has a string, a character, a Boolean, and an integer, and even a float. Could have all of those things. A list uses memory dynamically. That means it uses different areas of memory if it needs to. This means it can grow. We can, this is a special word here, append data to it. Append just means add, but it's a special word in computer science that you need to know, append. So something that is appended or added to it, that means it's added to it, okay? So what I'd like you to do is think about what differences there are between lists and arrays. I want you to post one of the differences into the chat, or if you're watching this later, into the comments. There should be at least 3 differences that I'm seeing in the chat. So I'm going to just wait a couple of minutes and see what people say. As many of you as possible, just all of you, I expect all of you who are participating here to post one difference that we've just talked about into the comments or into the chat. So what are the differences? Why are they different? Okay, you will be getting extra points if your comment is particularly good, if it's correct. We've just gone through the differences between a list and an array, so hopefully you are listening rather than posting silly messages. Good. So lists can only have one data type. They can only have one data type. Sorry, a list can have one data type, but it doesn't have to. So an array can only have one data type, but a list, you could have a list that has lots of different data types in it. So that's one difference. What else? Somebody else other than Sam? Everyone should be commenting as much as possible. Yeah, so arrays can only store one data type. That's kind of the same as lists can't have one data type. What else? Come on. Try and use your brains. Try and think back to what we were just talking about. Bet you weren't expecting me to ask you to join in properly, were you? So we talked about data types. If I quickly go back for a moment and then go back, see what you pick up from that one slide that I just quickly shown you. Go on, everyone should be commenting here, not just a couple of people. I know you're all there. Gonna go back again. See how much you can pick up. Go back to the array one. Oh. Good. So arrays can't add data. I'm frustrated that it's the same person again, but oh, well done there. Good. So yeah, arrays can't add data to them. Lists can. Adding data, there's a special word for it, appending. So you can't append to an array, but you can to a list. Good. So list uses data memory dynamically rather than data. So the space in the RAM, it can go in all sorts of places rather than just one space that it's been decided, oh, this is where it's going to be. Okay. So a list is a lot more flexible than an array. So you don't have to say how big they are when you create them. So what I'd like you to do in Trinket, so I'll remind you again how to get to that. So here we go. It's jump2.cc/python-new, and I posted that into the chat. So go to that website and type in that code. What I want you to do is try that code out and figure out why there is a problem with this. Do you remember the idea of, we said that lists, we can add items to them, but why is this an error? Why does it have an error? Okay, so if I were to bring this into here, let's zoom in a bit so you can see properly. So if I run this, it says list assignment index out of range. So what do you think that means? Index out of range. That means that 0, this is the index we're talking about here, 0 is not in the range of items that are being stored in friends. How many items are there in the list of friends at the moment? None. There are no items in the list of friends. So basically saying, could you please change my 0th item to be equal to John, is going, well, there isn't a 0th item, so I can't change it. So that's where your problem lies, okay? So going back to the slides, how do we add items to our list? Let's try the next one. So if you edit your code so it looks like this, John, Paul, Fred, Ringo, instead, and changing and trying to add the 4th item to be Stuart, we should still get an error. I want you to think about why. Let me just pull this back over. John, Paul, Fred, and Ringo. And then if I change Stuart, change that to 4, that's what you should be doing as well. So if I pull that over, John, Paul, Fred, and Ringo, friends 4 is Stuart. If we run that again, it's still index out of range, okay? So where it says index out of range, it's basically saying item 4, why is item 4 a problem? Well, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th item would be our final item, would be adding on an extra item. Again, we're trying to say, could you please replace item 4 with the item of Stuart? And it's going, well, I can't replace it because item 4 doesn't exist. So we need to use a special keyword, which we haven't used before. So your code needs to look something like this. All you need to do is change one little thing. So instead of saying friends 4 equals Stuart, I want you to do friends.append brackets Stuart, close brackets. Okay. Now, the reason this will work, let's pull it over. Oh, and put it in place and run it again. So now you had your list John, Paul, Fred, Ringo before, which was printed here. And then when we printed on this line here, it's now John, Paul, Fred, Ringo, Stuart. And that's because we use this special word append, which means add. That means it can add data to our list. Okay. That word append, we only really use it for adding items to a list. There might be times, sometimes when we use it to add to other things, but for the most part, append means add to the end of a list. Okay? Right. Arrays are fixed. You cannot add items to them. Okay, this one has four values, friends 0, friends 1, friends 2, and friends 3. Okay. Lists, however, can change size, but only if you use this append keyword. Okay, only if you use that word there. Right. There's a couple of other list methods you can use. You can use append value, so you can say, I will append the Stuart onto the end of my list. You can do insert index value. So insert will insert a value, so whatever you say value, so if you said Stuart or a letter, whatever it is you wanted as your value, and it will add it to the point in the list and move your other items along one. So the points in the list would be index. Okay, and then pop index will remove a particular index item from the list. So for example here, city.pop4, so this is city is P-A-R-I-D-S. City.pop4 removes item 4 from the list, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is this D here, and it returns that value D. It gives you back that value. If you were to ask what city, if you were to say something like value equals city.pop, value would become D. Okay. And it would also make city equal to P-A-R-I-S. Okay. But if you just had city.pop without any values in between, if you don't say which item you want, it doesn't remove any particular one. It only removes the item at the end of the list. And it also returns in the same way as before. You can say value equals city.pop, and value would become S in this example here. Remove value, you could say remove D, and it would remove that value from the list. Okay, so I'm going to go through, because I know this is a bit confusing, so I'm going to go through and give you an example of how this works. Okay, so our word is C-B-E-G-H-D. So I've got C-B-E-G-H-D in, and you can, and I've put it into a nice little table for you, so you can recognize which items are in the different places. So items index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, index 5. So where it says word 0 equals E, what does that do? Well, word 0, I thought I had these bit by bit. Let me fix that. Word 0, let me go back to the thing here. Word 0 will change this value. Word 0 is this value here, which is currently C. Yeah. So our value C changes to value E. Yeah. So it would now be C, B, E, G, H, D. Okay. So actually, that's what I did last time. I remember now. So I went E without making that big, B, and then E, G, H, and D. Okay. Now, if I said word pop 2, what would that do? Word pop 2? Well, that removes the item at index 2. So I've already highlighted it here. The item at index 2 is E. So I'm going to do it again. So E, B, and then because I've removed that item, everything else shifts along one. So here would be the letter G instead. So I'll put in G, and then H, then D. And now you'll notice there's nothing in word 5, index 5. And if we were to ask to change word index 5 into something, it would come up with an error because the list is not as long as that anymore. Okay. Now word remove G, again, I've highlighted that already. If I wanted to remove the letter G, well, there is only one letter G in there, so I will remove that one. E, D, and again, I'm moving the entire list along, so these H and D move along. So I don't leave a gap in the middle, I'm leaving a gap at the end. Okay, so this is H, and then D. Okay. Then word insert, if I insert at 0, this is where it becomes a bit more complicated, this idea of inserting. I'm inserting into where 0 is at the moment, and everything else moves along to the right. Okay, so I'm going to insert the letter Z here. Okay, so here, Z, E, B, H, and D. Okay. Then it says word pop 3. Now, where's index 3? Index 3, as I've already highlighted, is the letter H. So we're going to get rid of the letter H. Pop means get rid of. So it's now Z, E, B, and then D. We're getting rid of the letter H. Then if it says word pop, that just means get rid of the last letter. So if I said got rid of the last letter, it would now be Z, E, B. Okay. Then I'm going to do word dot insert 3R. So where's 3? 3 is at the end there. So actually, I'm inserting it, but I don't have to move anything along because there's nothing else to move along. So I'm just going to put in, it's a bit like appending this one. Z, E, B, and then R. And then if I append the letter A, remember append means add. It's Z, E, B, R, A. So when we print out the word, it'll print out zebra. Okay? So hopefully you kind of have a vague idea now of how that works. What I would like you to do now, so obviously these sections here, they have nothing in them, so they wouldn't print anything, they wouldn't have anything in those sections. What I'd like you to do now is go onto the online shared drive, that is a tiny URL, save the file tracing into your own area onto your computer, and then fill in that table, okay? So hopefully you can look at this example here to help you figure out how that works. Fill in that table. You should end up getting a particular word at the end. So tinyurl.com/berrycs. That's where I would like you to go. Make sure you're going to the right place. You're opening up the tracing table. It's in the practical intermediate programming. Okay, so in tracing, looks something like this. It reminds you at the top what all the different things do. It gives you your word. I want you to fill in all of these gaps here, and it should print out a word for you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to have a go at that. That will probably take us to the end of the lesson, and we'll see how you went. Okay, let me know how you're doing. Hopefully you'll have gotten at least part way through by now. And you should get a real word at the end, much like we got at the end here for the word zebra, instead of some other random garbled lot of words, and that will show you that you have been correct. So hopefully you've managed to do that. If not, just have another go, keep going. I'll give you a few more minutes. All right. Hopefully, most of you have managed to go through and complete that trace table. So we're going to go through it bit by bit. So I'm going to zoom in a bit more because I think I can do. Yeah. So we've got append value, which adds a new value to the end of the list. Insert index at a certain value. Insert a value at a certain index. It has to be in that order, otherwise it won't work. But it inserts that value at a point in the list and moves the other items along one. I think that's the one that people get stuck on the most. All right. And then list index equals value. This is the one that we should all know by now. We did that, started last week on that one. Changes the list value at a given index. Pop index removes a particular index value from a list. Pop just removes the last index value from a list. And then remove value removes a given value from a list. So let's have a go. Word is equal to B-E-A-K. So we've got the word beak. So let's type that in. Let's make sure my thing's working. B-E-A-K. All right. So now word 3 becomes N. So word 3, we can see here, the index 3 is K. Right. So B-E-A-N. Right. I've forgotten that this one in particular changes each word to be a word that is correct each time. So next one, append. What does that mean? That means add a value to the end of the list. Okay, so B-E-A-N-S. Okay, now word 3 equals D. So word 3, which is currently N, becomes D. So B-E-A-D-S. Okay. Then word.insert. So remember, we are inserting the value R at the point of 1 in the list. So 0 stays the same, but then we're inserting the letter R here, and then we're moving everything else along one. So E-A-D-S. So we've got breads now. I don't know what happened to that one, but you get the idea. Word 0 becomes T. So instead of B, we've got T. T-R-E-A-D-S. Oops. Okay. Then it's going to remove the letter T. Now, something I didn't mention earlier, if there was 2 T's in this, it would only remove the first item, not both of them. So that's something you would have to remember. It only removes the first item in the list that is equal to that value. So T, instead of T, we're removing that items and moving everything back, because we can't leave 0 blank if there's other items after it. So it's now reads. Okay. Word 1 becomes 0. Now, word 1, the item 1 is E at the moment. So instead of reads, it becomes R-O-A-D-S, roads. Now word.pop removes the letter S at the end, becoming R-O-A-D. And we're going to print out the word road. Yeah? Hopefully you managed to get that in your version of it as well. Next week, I'll be giving you a few more of these to be doing. And I'll be giving you a completely randomized one. So it will start with a completely gobbledygook thing. It will keep going through with loads of gobbledygook. And hopefully by the end, you'll get a word that is correct. And it'll be checking you on each one. So I've created a bit of Python code to do that. So hopefully you can have a bit of practice on these list different things you can do with lists, different methods you can do with lists. Okay, so I hope that today's lesson has been useful in terms of understanding how lists work and understanding that different lists the difference between lists and arrays, and about the different methods you can use with lists. All right, I will be seeing you again this time next week. Thank you to all of you who have submitted your videos. I have not yet gotten around to marking any of them yet, but I will be getting around to marking them. Please keep reminding me, because when it comes to marking, that's one of the last things I want to be doing. So keep pestering me on Show My Homework, and I will get round to it. Okay, have a lovely week. I will see you same time next week, and I will post the link onto Show My Homework for next on Monday, hopefully. So if I don't post it, please pester me and remind me, because during the week I don't always remember everything straight away. So it's only the things I've got scheduled that I actually remember to do. So keep pestering me to get those videos marked and to put up the link for next week's Python lists thing. We are not doing theory-based stuff at the moment, because I feel we need to cover a lot more of the practical side of the course, and so going through that in a bit more depth I think is a lot more useful at the moment, because we've pretty much covered all the basic ideas that I wanted to cover this year for the theory side. So practical it is. Again, have a lovely week. See you later.